Grace and peace, everybody. Welcome to Berean TV on Masonry, and religion. It's a subject that I've been dealing with. You can look at the earlier video that I have. There's an intro, plus I have the 12 charts, speaking about the Israelite charts, Masons, and religion. I see a lot of stuff on the internet about Freemasonry and exposing Freemasonry and how Freemasonry is the devil and Illuminati and this and that. But as a Christian researcher, as a Christian that's involved in apologetics, I have to I think I have to bring some clarity to the situation. I myself am not a Freemason, like I've stated before, but I know a lot of Freemasons, a lot of Masons that's involved in the church. When I look at the history of the AME Church, Richard Allen and Absalom Jones, they were Freemasons. Freemasonry, especially Prince Hall affiliates, they've done a lot in America, coming out of slavery and the civil rights movement with Baptists and AME brothers that have done a lot in the African American community. So I'm going to take my time and I'm going to go through the history of the craft and see what it says in light of the scripture. A lot of people, they want to start quoting Manly P. Hall and certain people and talking about Baphomet and the Baphomet and that's Satan. And we have to explain a lot of these things. I think there's not a lot of clarity. And a lot of people, they'll just make videos to get hits on YouTube, but I want to bring clarity, and I have to be truthful about it. And like I said, I'm a Christian apologist and researcher. As a Christian apologist, I often find that people will say things about Christianity that they have twisted, that's not right and exact. And I believe the old saying, do unto others as you would have them to do unto you. So even though I'm not a Freemason, I'm going to bring a clear history about Freemasonry. I hear people talking about that Taxel hoax and just a lot of foolishness that people that call themselves, or maybe they're good believing Christians and they just teach. They'll open up the Bible and they'll just quote one thing and say, I told you those Masons were devils. And they don't have a clear understanding about the Illuminati. Now, as a researcher, I believe that there's certain things that we have to do. I'm going to try to take my time and explain it. Later on, I'm going to do an entire PowerPoint presentation on this thing, and it's going to probably be like 3.5 hours. But right now, I'm going to cut it down to various sections of teachings, maybe about 30 minutes a piece. We have a studio, and the studio's under construction, and we're trying to set up that green screen and those computers and cameras and get everything right so we can present a lot of facts to you. I'm going to give you all some books. I'm going to give you some books that has helped me throughout my 20-something odd year of research dealing with the subject. Now, I used to be a pastor, but I used to pastor a church in Brooklyn, but I don't pastor anymore. I'm into full-time apologetics and research. Now, when I say the word apologetics, a lot of people don't understand what that means, so I want to take a minute to explain that. Apologetics coming from a Greek word apologia, and it means to speak in defense of something. I'm a Christian apologist. I speak in defense of the Christian faith. Another way that I can explain it is a couple of years back, about 2 decades now, O.J. Simpson was arrested for the murder of Nicole Simpson, his wife, and Ron Goldman. And he hired a team of lawyers. They would speak in defense of him. That was his dream team. They spoke as his apologia. And that's actually how the Kardashian family got real popular, because one of the persons on his dream team was Mr. Kardashian, F. Lee Bailey, and Johnny Cochran. And they were known as his apologists. They spoke for him. So that's where the word comes from. So I speak for the Christian faith. But when it comes down to Freemasonry, there's a lot of theories out there on the origins of Masonry, where Masonry comes from. I'm gonna begin with the earliest. On the last video, I began in 1717 with the earliest history of Masonry. In the previous videos, I got into how they were stone builders. And if we look at Freemasonry in 1717, Anderson's Constitution, there's other things that can trace it further back. We can trace it there's actually been historians and scholars that have traced it back to Egypt, ancient Kemet, that have traced it back to Babylon. But we're going to deal with major stops along the way. I'm going to begin in 1717, but we must go back to Solomon's Temple and the building of Solomon's temple and the whole legend of Hiram Abiff, the widow's son. I'm going to get into full detail. I'll probably spend an hour on that alone. But I explained in other videos how Dr. like Noble Drew Ali and different people, Charles Taze Russell, the founder of Jehovah's Witness, Joseph Smith, the Mormons Church, and he spoke about how the Indians were original Israelites from the lost tribe, and that's how I got into the whole thing dealing with the Israelite 12 chart tribe thing and how that's not historical. But a lot of people have been using things that have not been historical to teach certain truths to bring a people up. When I deal with the subject of Freemasonry, I myself, I understand there is no black, there is no white thing. When you start dealing with the spirit, when you start dealing with truth, when you start dealing with metaphysics, this doesn't have anything to do with black, brown, white, yellow. You can be Hispanic, you can be Asian, European, of African descent. It doesn't make a difference. But down throughout the years, so many people have been saying that Freemasonry, let's say, goes back to Africa. So I'm going to have to deal with the theory. Was it a pure thing? And did Europeans get a hold of it and turn it into devil worship? Turn it into Luciferianism? And so much on the internet, people are talking. They're weaving in and out with the history about Freemasonry and the Illuminati. We know that the Illuminati began in May of 1776 under Adam Weishaupt. Now, if Adam Weishaupt, or some people may know him as his code name Spartacus, if it began in 1717, if it began in 1776, the Illuminati and Freemasonry came about as a Grand Lodge in 1717, we have to go back even further. If we look back a little bit before that, we can prove that European Freemasonry existed. How can we do that? In the British Museum, we have something known as the Holywell manuscript, and it's a Regis poem. It's a poem that's there, and most scholars trace that poem back to 1390, between 1390 and 1425. And we also have something that's known as the Cook manuscript, and that shows before Anderson's Constitution, before 1717, that Freemasons were operating in Europe. They were building cathedrals, and they were doing a lot in Europe then. So the question that someone would have to ask is, what was it at that time? If the Illuminati didn't begin until May of 1717, did they infiltrate Freemasonry? Why would people use those two words together? And I'm going to take the history backwards very slowly. Now, when I do this, a lot of people don't understand. They just want, like I said, Christians, I don't believe that they give Freemasonry a fair shot. They just want to start quoting Manly P. Hall. They want to start quoting Aleister Crowley and Levi and different people, and start talking about Baphomet, the Baphomet, and this and that. And we have to understand certain things. As a researcher, when I approach history, I have to approach history like a detective. I have to approach history like, y'all seen CSI. Let me give you an example. If a family, let's say a family of four was in the house, a mother, a father, and two children. They were in the house and they were watching television. And the father heard the doorbell ring. And the father went to the door, and it was a home invader coming in the house. Somebody tried to get in the house with a gun and lay everybody down. And the father fights the invader off. The father fights the guy off that's trying to come in the house, take the gun from him, and shoots the guy. He called the cops. The cops come on the scene. The EMS is there. They're trying to save the guy's life. And the guy died on the scene. Then detectives come. Crime scene specialists, they'll come on the scene. Now, when they come on the scene, the thing that they have to do is separate certain things. They have to gather evidence. So we have something that's known as evidence, but they also have something that's known as artifacts or relics that's in the house. Now, what do I mean by that? The evidence would be the gun, maybe the blood on the father's shirt. The evidence would be the dead body on the ground and the blood on the ground, that would be the evidence. They'll have to distinguish certain things, and they'll to see the gorges on the ground, and they'll understand that that came from the EMS when the ambulance came to try to save the man's life that was on the ground. So they'll have to discard that and separate the evidence and take the gun, maybe the father's shirt, do gunshot residue on his hands, on the dead person's hands, and that's all evidence collection. That's the evidence. But outside of the evidence, the house also have things that are known as relics. Now, what would be a relic? A relic would be the TV that was already in the house, the kid's Xbox, what the wife was cooking, the steak, the food on the stove and the refrigerator. All of that are relics because they were there before the violation took place in the house. And we have to be fair with Masonry when we're dealing with the history of Masonry and understanding what are relics in Freemasonry, what have been there prior, and what came in later on. I often tell people this if I'm debating or I'm sharing on the subject of Christianity. We have to understand what are artifacts dealing with Christianity and what's the evidence of a crime or something occurring. Now, when we go back into the history of the church, I begin to understand that nobody celebrated Jesus' birthday. Nobody had Christmas trees. Nobody had Easter eggs. Nobody wore crosses on their neck. Nobody dressed the way the Catholic Pope do, and a lot of these modern day bishops dress. All of these things are evidences after Christianity has been violated. But prior to that, there was no Christmas tree. There was no Easter egg and all of these other stuff. So to be fair to Freemasonry as well as Christianity and all of history, when we're doing research, we have to understand, like detectives, like CSI investigators, we have to understand the difference between relics, and we have to understand the difference between evidence. So being fair in Freemasonry and the historical research dealing with Freemasonry, I have to understand and separate certain things. What I'm not going to do in this series, if you're coming here to listen about exposing Freemasons, grips and passwords, I'm not into that. This site is not here for that. I'm doing historical research and bringing the evidences dealing with that. I think a lot of times when it comes to it, like I said, Freemasonry has gotten a bad rap. A lot of people want to talk about signs and symbols in Freemasonry, and they like William Morgan book exposing the secrets of Freemasons. And I notice that those sites get a lot of hits because people want to hear a secret. The 33rd degree, the rites, different rites, and the 33rd degree and different rites, and the Shriners and all type of different things. And they want the Shriners exposed as the Illuminati and Satan worship and all of that. This isn't the site for that. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give fair research, background, and historical proof. Now, anybody that has ever studied the history of Masonry will know that it's very difficult. It's a difficult origin. We have to go back to the Knights Templar. We have to go back to Babylon and Nimrod. And I'm going to give y'all a couple of different books that I've been dealing with. I read everything on Albert G. Mackey, Manly P. Hall, and Albert Pike. I read a lot of those guys. I have some other things here. The African Origins of Christianity, Paul Boyd. He speaks about the mystery schools here. And let me see what else I have. Freemasonry and its ancient rites. C.W. Leadbeater. That's a good one. And Masonry, the meaning behind Masonry. These are all decent books. These are just some. But like I said, what I'm dealing right now, Jack Buddha. That book has helped me a lot. As far as Black Masonry, White America, that's a good book. And there's a few others that I'm going to give, but these are the books that I'm going to be primarily dealing with in this video and in the next video. So like I said, and another thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to separate Freemasonry. Why am I going to do that? Because I'm giving y'all what they told us in 1717 when the Grand Lodge was formed in Europe. Freemasonry was separated between blacks and whites. We're going to deal with the theory. Was Freemasonry something that was pure and it became corrupted by different Europeans, and now today is some evil secret cabal that wants to rule the world? Or did it start out like as some type of worship? of the Most High God, the Son, where they're just symbols that were used, and Christians turned around and flipped those symbols or didn't understand those symbols, and they wanted to shut the thing down, so they spoke evil against them. Now, I'm a Christian apologist, like I said, but I have to admit, a lot of times Christians, we are spooked out. I shouldn't say that, but the truth of the matter is, a lot of times Christians are spooked out if they don't understand it. Oh, that is the devil. We're going to explain the devil. We're going to explain Lucifer, and we're gonna just get into the depths of what all that's going to be about. So we're gonna take it slow. Like I said, we're gonna take it slow, and we're gonna deal with. I want to deal with a whole bunch of stuff. I'm gonna spend a lot of time on that widow's son and the building of Solomon's temple. I think, like I said, I think a lot of people like Elijah Muhammad, a lot of people came out there in Clarence 13X, and the 5%ers, they used to, back in the days, they used to come out and they were taught certain things in the lodge. I remember a lot of them guys got sent up to Sing Sing. They committing crimes and going in the courtroom, flashing Masonic signs, and in a barbershop, flashing, doing crazy stuff, not knowing. And I think a lot of times people, they go running with grips and signs and all of this stuff and wanting to know a secret and not getting down to the depths of what the esoteric was about, what the teaching was originally intended to do. And we have to get into history of the oral tradition. I must get into Kabbalah. Oral tradition and Kabbalah. They say Moses went up into the mountain and he came down, and the first time he broke the tablets, and he had the commandments, and he went back up there and he wrote them down this time. God didn't write them with his finger. Moses wrote them down this time, but Kabbalah tradition teaches that Moses went up a third time and he came down with Kabbalah. He came down with an oral tradition that was powerful, and we're going to get back into some Enochian magic and stuff, but that's for later on. But I'm going to deal primarily with Albert Pike, Manly P. Hall. I'm going to deal with them with the history of the craft, but two other people that are very interested in Freemasonry that a lot of Christian apologists quote. We have to deal with Aleister Crowley. He called himself the Beast. He spoke about ritualistic murders and drinking blood and all of this stuff. Now, were these people already spiritualists and mystics? Were they already involved in certain things? Levi and the Baphomet, were they already involved in something that we would call Satanism or some type of wicked spiritualism to control people's minds? Remember, this is spiritual warfare. It's metaphysical. It's spiritual warfare. It's outside of this realm. So atheists, this is not even for atheists. This is for believers that deal with the spirit realm. Indians dealt with the spirit realm. All type of different African tribes, bunch of European groups, they believed in the spiritual realm. And how you get into that realm and how you cast out demons and work spells and magic and alchemy. And I'm going to get into Francis Bacon, but we're going to take our time with certain people. But we're going to deal with, in my next video, we're going to deal with Levi. We have to deal with Levi and that Baphomet. We have to deal with Aleister Crowley. I'll deal with the comments that Albert Pike made and Manly P. Hall. A lot of people don't understand. Before Manly P. Hall came into the lodge, he was already a mystic. He was already working on the secret teachings of all ages. So we have to explain that, like I said, to be fair with Freemasons, we have to explain that. We have to understand allegories and what they meant by Solomon's Temple, what they meant by certain things. I'm going to deal with the Knights Templar. A lot of people, like I said, certain stops in the history, but I'm going to back it up all the way to Kemet, and we'll get into Imhotep, and then we'll see what was what from there. But we got to remember, like I said, that Hollywood manuscript, that Regas poem, and that Cook manuscript. We have to remember those two things, and that takes it back even before 1717. Because if I can explain, if I can see that it existed already, was it later on corrupted, like I said, and was it later on corrupted, or was it corrupted all the time and different people came and this is just something to control the masses of people? Because religion is powerful. Religion's always been something that a lot of people's been, you can say, mystified. Let's say mystified. I'll use that right now. I'm going to dispel some other myths. Like, let me see what's another great myth in this thing, especially here in North America. A lot of people got this thing twisted. In all actuality, there are only 3 degrees in Masonry. Dr. Ben told y'all that. He said a lot of people claim that he held 300. I didn't hear this from him personally, but a lot of people said that he held 360 degrees, dealing with ancient Kemet and the mysteries. With Dr. York, he's a whole nother subject. Malachi Z. York, he's a whole nother subject on the craft and various degrees and all of this stuff. But a lot of people been getting mystified. There's only 3 degrees.